and welcome back to Gearhead Geeks, where in this video we're going to get our KZ400 rolling, which means we'll get the wheels on, we'll get the wheels all cleaned up, get everything done that needs to be done so at least the chassis rolls around the floor and we can park it, and then we can start working on the engine later. So let's get to it and get this thing rolling. Well, we've put together the lower triple trees. When I went to look back, it had a recording error, so I'm sorry I didn't get to show you, but we just greased up the bearings. Everything was clean, greased up the bearings and put them on, and it is like perfect. So we have painted the where the triple trees are and in this area so that we can work, and we haven't painted the rest of things. We'll paint them one at a time as we go along. We don't need to have the whole thing painted because we might be scratching up something, and we're just using paint on this so it's easy to touch up, and the next person who gets it will have an easy time of it. We're using a high quality paint, and but it also encapsulates rust. I have pretty much made this rust free, but you never know. There's always some hidden stuff somewhere. So it encapsulates it and it's all good. So we'll go on and continue doing the front end. I'm going to get the top triple tree ready, and the forks have already been done, so they'll look good. We'll get all the bolts nice and shiny and get the front end on this thing. Okay, now we can assemble the front forks. So first things first, our top triple clamp, put that on. Alright, and then we'll put on our fork tubes. And I believe the left hand one here is where the brake goes. Fork tube, line it up at the top, and we'll just tighten this down a little bit, just enough to hold it. Then the other side, same thing. Everything is nice and straight, lines up perfectly, so there's no issues with bent forks or bent triple clamps or anything else. Everything's just basically there to go, ready to go. Okay, so forks are in place. We had rebuilt the forks in another video, so now the only thing we need to do is we've got a couple bolts here, this way. Either way. Caps back on. And the front end is basically together. A couple little bolts here and there, but and so for like these rusty parts, I've been using this Rust-Oleum rust dissolver, and it works quite well. You just squirt it on. It's kind of a gel. So on these real rusty parts in here, I'm just going to go ahead and squirt some of this stuff in here. Then I can run it around with my fingers and just make sure everything's covered. And just let it sit for a little while, and we'll come back and see how that works. But we just go in, make sure all the parts are completely covered with the stuff. and we'll see how it did. And the next thing is we need to strip some paint off of these guys. These are part of the everything's been painted black routine. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a little bit of the citrus strip, and I'll just take an old brush. And what's nice about the citrus strip, you can wash it, clean it up with water, so it makes it fairly easy. So we'll just take and pour a little bit on here, and I'll use a brush to brush it around. It doesn't stink up too badly. It does have some smell, but it's not terrible. And I'm just taking it and just pushing this around with the brush. And we're not making a big mess anywhere. We don't have this stuff laying around. These little buckets work just fine for this. And we can reuse them. Rinse them out, reuse them, and we're all good. And now, and one of the next things we want to do is let's take a look at this spacer. It's an old zinc plated spacer, but it's really seen better days. So I've been using a little bit of this aluminum cleaner and brightener on aluminum. It does clean and it brightens aluminum. You just got to be careful not to leave it on too long. But I also found it seems to work pretty good on zinc. So we're going to give this a few squirts here. And we looked at it before, and I'm just got rubber gloves, and I'm just going to kind of wipe it in with the gloves. Let it sit on there for a few minutes, and you can see it's already starting to lighten up that really, really dark zinc. What's happened here is this was painted black, and I removed the paint with some paint stripper and got most of it off of there. But as you can see, it's starting to get lighter and lighter. And I'm just kind of rubbing it in. Make sure you got your gloves on, obviously. Well, let's see what that does. Well, we have gotten rid of a lot of the really, really nasty stuff. I'm going to go rinse this off. I'll be right back. And we'll see how we did with it. Okay, and as you can see, it is much, much brighter, but it still has a lot of staining on it and whatnot. So let's try and see if we can bring this thing back to life. And we're just going to use a little metal polish. Zinc responds very, very well to metal polish. Get my hands dry enough here. Okay. And we'll just grab a rag. We don't need to have anything too nice. Just grab the rag. Now I'm going to take a little bit of Autosol, which is one of my favorites. It's easy to get. I got it on Amazon. I've been using it for decades and decades, and it always seems to be about the best. So nothing more than a little Autosol on a rag. Let's take a look at this thing now and see what we can turn this into. This was a very, very nasty, horribly abused spacer. I'm going to have to get a little more here. And we'll just work it in a little bit. And let's see what it does. It may not be enough. Maybe we have to put some more plating on it, but let's just see if we can just restore this part nicely without any extra muss or fuss. It's still plated. The zinc, this does not remove zinc plating. It just kind of polishes it up. Okay, I'm not going to work too hard at it. I'm going to sit there and do this forever, but let's just see if we if it's something we can use, or it's something we need to do more with. And from the looks of it, it looks like it's something we're going to be able to use without having to go any further. Okay, a few seconds work. We did not remove the zinc plating. We didn't do anything. All that we did is we took some of this aluminum brightener, got rid of all the tarnish on it, and a little bit of autosol, and it's not a bad looking spacer. It's not perfect by any means, but it's not bad. We could use it. We still might do some zinc plating on it, but it looks good. So another good way to polish things is using an angle grinder. Now you can get the battery powered ones, which are really nice to have. I don't have one, but I do have an air powered one. And you get these little twist on pads. Now sometimes you can use them for like a Scotch-Brite pad. You just twist it on. There's little sanding pads that you can do, but they have some really nice little felt pads that you can get, and you can put those on and you load it up with a buffing compound and polish aluminum. I've got one that's already kind of used here. And now what you want are these buffing compound sticks. You can get them in Amazon. They're just a polishing compound, and there's all sorts of different grades. Let me grab another one. You might have a green one for doing plastic or something of that nature. You might have a black one for doing chrome. You can have this is a rouge, which gets used a lot, and it's kind of a brownish color. But if you need to polish a part, you can just take it, and it's going to make some noise now, and you can take this and put some on your pad, and then just take your part and polish away. This will get into crevices. You can get into nice tight spaces. And then once you're done, you can just put a little metal polish on it, and away you go. I'd already worked on this piece a little bit, but it gives you the idea of what you can do with it. And it's a really easy way to go. You can also, now I'll move the camera over here, let's move this guy out of the way. Wheel's getting ready. You can use a regular buffer. And we'll get this guy. A regular buffing wheel. This is just on this particular is a Harbor Freight buffer. It's been painted orange, but you turn it on, and this is always the best way to go. But if you don't have one of those, a little angle grinder or a lot of elbow grease can do you a good job. You can take steel wool, rub it down with some quadruple aught steel wool, and then use autosol on it, and it'll come out nice. This took about 10 minutes to clean up, and it was in pretty rough shape. That's all you really need to do, and then just take a little bit of autosol or whatever your favorite metal polish is, clean it up, and you'll have a decent looking part. This is the front brake holder, and you can make it perfect, but you really don't need to for just general purposes. Even the factories didn't do a great job on it because it sits at an angle where you're kind of looking down on it, and it never really has to be super polished. But the better you make it, the better it is. It's just up to you. So there's a little area in here that needs a little bit of work. Let me turn it on. And we'll put more of our little rouge on it. And that area is all nice and finished up. It needs wiping off, but it's all cleaned up and nice. So this is almost ready to go. We'll start going ahead and reassembling all the brakes inside of here, get all the parts greased up, get it all ready for putting on the front wheels so that we can get our motorcycle up and rolling. And a good way to clean out holes and things like that is you get these little stainless steel wire brushes that you can use on your drill and get all the crud out of them that way. And now you have nice clean holes and they're ready to be greased up, and so we can start assembling this plate. So now we can go on ahead and let's install our front tire. I've cleaned up the rim, got all the paint off of it, got the spokes all cleaned up, got the rim cleaned up, got all the rust out of it. So the next thing we need to do is put on our rim strip. And just make sure your rim strip's in pretty good shape. This is not terrible. You find the hole for the valve stem, and it is right here. You find the hole in here that matches, and just line it up the best you can and put on the strip. Make sure it's centered to protect your spokes. We can now get our hole is lined up. So next we're going to go on ahead and rinse these parts off. This is the rust remover, and we'll see how we did. And the rust is basically gone. It still has a lot of black nastiness on things, but that's okay. We'll get it all cleaned up. Start wiping off some of these parts like this spring. All the rust is gone and it doesn't look terrible. It's quite usable in that form. We don't have to do any more work to it. All that rust is just gone. Don't need to wire brush it, don't need to do anything. This pointer was solid rust, and it's pretty good, but we're going to have to replate this. We'll replate this and make it super shiny and make it look like chrome. These two screws and two bolts are just plain nasty, and they're not bad. it cleaned up fairly well. We're gonna have some good luck with that. Still got a bunch of residue on it. The rust itself is dissolved, but it's just still got a thick coating of stuff on it. But for the most part, not bad. So the Rust-Oleum rust remover did a fairly good job. Now we can go look at the paint remover, and we can see the paint is bubbled up. I'm going to get my fingers out of the way. Paint is bubbled up, so we'll be able to get this stuff off of here and then get this part cleaned up so it's like new again. So the paint removal process did pretty well. The part is got a little bit of rust on it, but as you can see, it is no longer painted, which is what we wanted in the first place. We want to get out of the paint business here, or the old flat black. And all these nuts got a lot of rust on them. They're not pretty, but at least there's no more paint on it. We can have something to work with. And same with this. Very old, nasty looking nut. It looks like it's still got some zinc on it though. So we might just try and clean that up a little bit. And lastly, this washer, which is painted black, is looking great. So good. Now, the spring had a lot of rust on it, so I need to rinse it a little more, and we're going to go on ahead and get these parts cleaned up because we need to put some more zinc on this stuff and make them look good. So I'll be back. So the first thing I want to do here is let's try and with our aluminum brightener and see if this does the job that we need. And I'll just hold this over the top of everything. And I'm going to just scrub with my hands here a little bit. We'll get this cleaner and brightener and see what it does. We do seem to have some rust going on in here. There's a little bit of rust underneath. And I just wanted to see what it would do. Okay. Now that got it in, let me go rinse it off. And now, as we can see, it's much brighter than it was. That stuff really does a good job of that. So let's try a little autosol on it. Why not? We'll try it on everything else. If it's good enough, it's good enough. If not, we'll put some zinc on it and then make it really nice. And that is all that was needed for this part. We no longer have that ugly paint on it, and the zinc is in reasonably good shape and it polished up fairly nicely. A little more cleaning on it, but it's ready to put back together. Nothing at all wrong with that. Okay, I'm going to try a little super clean on it and one more time. And that is very close to the factory finish. Perfect. No more required. Okay, so now we've got our parts cleaned up fairly well, and we are ready to start reassembling our front brakes. So the first thing we need to do is we have the two actuators. They've been cleaned up. They're in reasonably nice shape. They were rusted solid, but not anymore. So we're going to take a little bit of grease here, and we will put them on the shafts. Come on. A little more grease. now we got nice greased up shafts, and they will actuate nicely. So put that in there. One on each side. They're both identical. Okay. Now that's done, let me clean up some grease off of my fingers here. Get it all over everything. Grab another towel. Okay. So now we've got those in. And now what we need to do is put our brake shoes in. They've been all cleaned up. They're in really nice shape, actually. So we've taken our springs that we had all the rust off of, and the way these go in is there's an actuator and a rotator. So now we take a small amount of grease, a very small amount of grease, and we put them on our actuators and our rotators so that they spin nicely. Okay, and that's all you do there. And then all you have to do is you take the shoes, you rotate them this way, and you get one on here, and then you take the other one and you'll just kind of stretch it and pop it on. Maybe let's stretch a little more on this one. Stretch and pop it on. So now the actuators are on, the brake pads are on, it's all in good shape. Okay. The next thing we need to do is, I worked over the needle a little bit. It's not chrome-like anymore because there's so many pits in it. So we'll just take the best side and we will put this on here. But there's, first of all, there are two little felt washers that go in underneath, and they hold grease. You grease those up and they keep the shaft sealed and make it so that it doesn't absorb water, and it keeps a little bit of lubrication in there. And we'll take this other one, do the same thing, get a little bit of grease, we put it on this little piece of felt, and the felt goes around these guys. And that's all there is to that. And wipe off our hands again. Okay, now we'll put our actuator on, and our brakes pull this way. The cable comes in and it pulls. So no matter, we know that if it pulls that way, we know which way this needs to go. And so we'll put this on the very, very end, as close as we can to the edge of this where it says usable range. Let me flip it over, see if it makes a difference. No, it's the same on both sides. So take the best side, we'll put that up. Doesn't think they're about the same actually. And we'll use our usable range right there. Okay, so now the next thing we need to do is we need to get our actuators on. Okay, and in this case, it goes about. We're gonna guess about where it goes. There's the spring goes on first, and then we take this, and once it gets started, we can get the spring. We have to go over two. There's a hump here in the middle for our. Get this started here. For where the screw goes, and it allows us to turn in here once we get it all the way down. Okay. And that allows us to turn, and we do the same thing with this guy. We need to get him basically in position. We'll get it over the top of that first. Okay, all right. Make sure our indicator's in the right spot. Let everything sit. Now we can take this and rotate it back a little bit. And we'll get the spring, a return spring. We'll get it started on there anyway. You have to kind of have to work it. There it goes. And pops on. So now we need to just get this to where it's about where it needs to be. And I believe it's right about there. And again, this may change later, but for now, you just got to get this to push on there. We'll see. And I'll give this a little tap. It's gentle. Okay. And we'll do the same thing here. Okay, now everything is on here. Everything is relaxed. And the brakes work perfectly. All we got to do is put our screws in, and this guy is done. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to just move this guy right into position. We've got it hanging from our ceiling winch, and the front wheel is sitting there ready to go, and we are just going to wheel this thing over. No lifting required. Just put it in, get everything lined up, and push the axle in. Axle is in. Just that simple. Lower it down a little bit. Everything in line. Everything's lined up, which it is. And all we need to do is we put on this guy. All we'll need is put the nut on the other side. And get a wrench for it. Take our 22mm wrench, and we're good to go. Everything will need to be tightened up in the end, but that just made it simple. We are now close to starting to get a rolling motorcycle. We're going to pull the swing arm back off and do a few things. I just needed it for balance, and we're all good. Relatively simple. Let's move it out to where we can roll it and just run it up. where we need it. Need it that high. So get it down a little bit. Pick our winch. Well, it's now time to put on the swing arm. So we've got all the bolts figured out. We've got all the caps cleaned up. Everything is nice and clean. The swing arm is painted. All the nasty stuff has been taken off of it. So let's get down to it. We need to go in from the top or it's going to make. Do it this way. Get the caps in place. Okay, then what we need to do, get one of the shock in place, and this is just here to hang on to things, and the swing arm is basically on there. And there's a nut which is all cleaned up and nice, and we can put that on the other side for now. Done. And we'll put another bolt in the other shock. It goes right in. And the swing arm is up and running. And it's ready to go. So we're going to start working on the other pieces to get the rear wheel on, and pretty soon we will have a rolling chassis. And next we're going to be putting on the sprocket. We've cleaned it up and we've got it looking pretty good, and it is ready to be put on. And it's a fairly straightforward operation. There's just this hub that goes inside of here. Pushed out the spacer. There's a spacer that goes in there, and that then goes through the side, and we put on a nut and washer, and we'll be ready to go. Let's go do that. And it'll just go through here just like that. And we put on a washer and our nut, and all this stuff has been cleaned up and replated as necessary, so things look good, and our rear sprocket is on. Just that simple. The next thing we're going to be doing is our rear wheel, and we'll get a few parts ready and we'll get down to that. And now all we need to do is, we've already cleaned up our spacer. It's in nice shape. The rear wheel is basically ready to go on. We have the rear hub. I need to get the rubber pieces for it. We have our adjuster. We don't have any, we're not putting bolts in the adjuster yet. They're just, they need a little more cleaning. But we will throw this together. We got an axle, which is all cleaned up. Nicely, everything looks nice on it. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for what we're doing. This is a rider, and I'll go grab the rubber parts, and we have our 4 rubber dampers that go inside, and you just place them one at a time in there. And we can then lift our rear wheel into place. this way where I can actually see. That's better. So now it lines up. And what we need to do is take and put our spacer in. That goes right in. Get everything lined up here so we get the axle in. Oops. There's that. Spacer. And in it goes. And it's just that simple. Line this up a little bit, get a little clearance going. And we now have a rolling chassis. We have a nice big nut. Not bad. A rolling chassis, and now once that's done, we can now start working on the engine and then we're going to finish up the seat also, but we want to do that after the engine in because we don't know what we're going to do for a tank. We're going to try and make the stock one work. I've got another tank that looks really, really good, but I'm not sure about how the petcock's going to work. So we'll deal with that when we get to it. But right now, we have a rolling chassis that looks just fine for what we're doing. We've already done our brake link in another video. We'll put that on later. There's some details that we're going to be working on in here. So I'm not going to put the brake link on just yet because I've got to work on the brake pedal and everything else because all that stuff is bent and rusted like everything else. But everything on this bike is there's not a speck of rust. Nothing is bent. Nothing is painted where it shouldn't be painted, and it's just looking really, really good. So. Well, we've got a rolling chassis. This thing is basically ready for us to start working on the engine, and with that being done, we can then work on all the other parts, get the seat finished up, do all the other things that we need to do. But our front wheel is in good condition, our rear wheel is in good condition. There is no other types of things that need to be done as far as making it roll. We put on a set of handlebars, which seem to be pretty good. I've got another set, but we'll look at them. But right now, we're in good shape. So, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and make a comment. So, we'll see you next time.